Hello, I'm Nancy Smith Maddox on WYTV7, Shine Your Light Radio Ministry, and we do a weekly show where we interview the most exciting people in the world. The mantra of WYTV7 is if we've helped one, we've done our job, which is very interesting because the guest we're talking to today really has a mantra that's almost exactly like that, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. But WYTV7 is a nonprofit, and we do a lot of community work. We do financial literacy. We have a giving program that we do. We give lunches during the summer and things like that. So it's really exciting. What WYTV is 7, and we do have a global audience that views our shows. So without further ado, let me introduce my very special guest. His name is Matt Gersper, and he's from Mooresville, North Carolina. Very exciting man. I think you're gonna really enjoy this show. He's done a lot. He is a published author, and his mission is to improve the health and well-being of the world, one person at a time. Very similar to WYTV7. He loves to inspire people. He's an international speaker as well, and has lived a corporate life too. So we're going to talk a little bit about this today. He's published 3 books, and he does all kind of talks and lectures to motivate people and to inspire people. And on top of that, he's owner of Third Rock Essentials, which is the essential oils. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start. How are you today, Matt?
I'm wonderful, Nancy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. It's 90 degrees here in Arkansas where I am. And they said my grandson got in the car this morning and he's like, Nene, the weather's cooling off, and I'm like, that's good. He said this is the last day of 90. It's going to be in the 70s next week, and I'm like, well, thank you, weatherman. So it's going to cool off a lot here, which is going to be nice. It's going to feel like fall. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you started? You're an entrepreneur, a published author, and a speaker. You have a lot going on, and you also came from the corporate world too. So I want to get a little bit into that too, if we can. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and where you got where you are.
Well, as a kid, I was an athlete, and I always wanted to play professional sports, and actually played football and ran. I was a pole vaulter also in college. And after college, I got 3 chances to at the pros. So I actually went up to the Canadian Football League and played a little bit there before I got cut. And then I went to the National Football League with the Raiders after they won the World Championship, and I got cut. And then a couple years later, I went down to the USFL down in Orlando with the Orlando Renegades, and I got cut. So 3 tries. I had a baby on the way, and I realized I had to do something different. So I launched into back to school, back to work, and that led to a really good career in the corporate world, where I got to do many, many different roles, and ultimately ended up at the vice president level in a couple of companies. In the second company that I was working with, I had a pretty big disagreement with the executive management, and I was high enough ranked that I could have the disagreement, but I didn't have enough control to win, I wasn't convincing enough to win the argument, and so I essentially got fired. And I was a good employee, so they couldn't technically fire me, but they laid me off. Same outcome. And so I was undeterred. I decided that I would start a company to implement the vision that I had for that industry. And no sooner had I started that business than I got called from a former colleague who said her husband was looking to buy a company. And so I quickly changed directions and ended up participating in the acquisition of this company in the international trade business. That was my real first big step into becoming an entrepreneur. We bought that company from the big accounting firm, KPMG. We ran it for about 10 years. I launched a startup that was similar to it, synergetic to that company. Also at the same time, 15 years ago now, And we grew those companies together for about 7 years. We merged them after that. I went from operations as the president of the startup to become the chairman of the board of the company, which was a lot of fun. And then we ran another 3 years, and then we sold the company. That was back in 2014. And that was when I decided at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, trying to figure out what the next steps were going to be, that I came up with the idea for Happy Living, which is the company I've been running for the last 5 years. That's the company whose mission you talked about, being on improving the health and well-being of the world, one person at a time. And Nancy, we've recently changed that to improving the happy of the world, one person at a time. And the reason for that is how you define health and well-being is different for everybody. It's
That's
different.
right.
It's based on what you want to achieve in life. And I can give you 2 examples. Jack LaLanne had a very significant life. I'm aging myself, but he was one of the original guys that really cultivated this health and wellness industry way back in, I think, the 40s and certainly 50s and 60s. And he was a physical specimen, and he ate right, and he exercised, and he improved the lives of a lot of people. More recently, B.B. King, the great jazz musician, not exactly a physical specimen ever in his life as far as I could tell, but he brought joy to millions and millions of people and changed lives, influenced people. And so those stories really influenced me to try to take away the judgment of the words health and wellness and to focus on more building the capacity that you need to take care of yourself and have something left over for others. So we define that now more as happy instead of health and wellness.
Well, I love that you're using all the words that I love and that I've dealt with all my life. I was a CEO of a large credit union in Jacksonville, Florida, and I've helped people all my life, although it's been on the financial side. But it really, I think we're kind of cut from the same cloth, because really you're talking about health and well-being and happiness, and I'm talking about happiness through a financial arena. But it's just really when it gets in there. Well, when I retired a few years ago, I'm like, what am I going to do now? I'm not ready to retire. I'm too young to retire. I'm not ready to stop. And God just kept telling me, keep helping people, keep helping people. And so that's when I started Shine Your Light Foundation and the radio ministry about 3 years ago. And I've just been really excited about. And that's what I do. I let other people get on my show and I interview them so they can shine their light out into the world, because everything that you're doing, the world needs to hear about. So I'm happy we have a global marketplace here at WYTV7, so we can reach a lot of people. But I love Happy Living. I love your T-shirt, and I love that, and I love how you talked about joy and happiness, and it's really important in this day and time to teach us how to live a happy life, because there's so much going through our mind and through our bodies and all of that. It's really, really very difficult. So I think there's a huge marketplace out there for what you do. So tell me a little bit about, you've got one of your top speaking topics is from fired to 42 million, one guy's story. And you said in here that it was an entrepreneurial roller coaster. I like that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh my goodness, it was a roller coaster. So that's the company we bought in it was 2004. I got fired in January of that year, and we ended up completely changing the direction of what I was going to do to not compete against the company that I just got fired from, but rather to launch into this brand new industry that I didn't even understand what it was about. When I had the opportunity to buy a customs business, I didn't know what customs meant. So that's all the international rules and regulations that govern cross-border or international trade.
Wow.
And so we bought, it was great. It was great fun. So we bought a company an existing company that basically digitized the rule books. If you can think of all the different manuals that would govern cross-border transactions, not just in the U.S., but in all countries around the world. Well, we we were early on involved in digitizing that so it could be automated in its process.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I launched a startup that it took a few years to figure out how it was going to work, part of the roller coaster. But what we did was we worked with big multinational corporations and defined all the products that they sold, whatever products they would buy or sell. Every single thing that you can think of as a product has a customs code associated with it. And so we built their databases to include those customs codes that define the products. And then over the 7 years, we merged those two companies together, and we were providing software and data that would be integrated into the big computer systems of these big multinational companies and automate much of the customs process. So that's what we did. The roller coasters were, we started off with these big grandiose plans that we would we raised $2.2 million in 45 days. I thought there's nothing to it. And it's really hard. We just got really lucky. So that started off really good. And then for the first 2 or 3 years, the startup that I launched and that I was running went through 2 or 3 or 4 identity crises, trying to figure out what were we going to actually bring to the marketplace. And with fits and starts and failures and successes, we finally stumbled into the plan I talked to you about, which was designing software that helped the customs official in these offices to work better. So I spent all my time basically in my 2 previous industries optimizing the business processes of companies and the folks that work in companies. The decade before, it was in this auditing business. The decade after I got fired, it was in international trade. But the process was the same,
right,
which is taking the collective intelligence of a marketplace, a bunch of people, professionals doing the same kind of work, and distilling what the best practices are of those work processes, and then building those into a piece of software, and then going back to the professionals and say, okay, Nancy, does this work for you? And you say, yeah, it's perfect. And then I go to the next person and say, does this work for you? Yes, but if you could just add this component, then we could improve it. And we just went back and forth that way until we developed these beautiful software applications that help people work better.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm going to age myself too here. I looked around probably about maybe, gosh, I've been retired 15 years, so probably 25 years ago, I looked around and we had, just like your bookshelf back there, we had our policy and procedure manuals at the credit union, which was a federally insured institution. So there were a lot of rules and regs, and we had it. And the binders were like 4-inch binders, 5 of them. And I walked around with my little pad, and I'm like, where's your pull out your loan policies and procedures. I want to see if you have the most current one in your manual, to one vice president. And of course she said, well, let me see if I can find it. And then the next one, the operations manager, I went to her and I said, let's see if this new teller can pull how to cash a check and how to key it in and all. See if she can do that. Pull your manual out and let me see if it's updated. Her manual had dust this thick on it. And I'm like, there's something really wrong with this thing. This needs to be automated so we actually set about a task to do that at the credit union. That was a long time ago. And we actually it wasn't to the degree that you're talking of with international, but it was more or less a model policy and procedure manual for all credit unions for the National Credit Union Association. So that was kind of good because it was on the computer. You could pull up, you could put in a keyword and pull up what you were trying to do. And it made training a whole lot easier for people that were, coming into the marketplace. So, yeah, that's very interesting. Well, you had a lot of experience and it gave you a lot, but you also had a lot of stress too. So I can understand why you're doing what you're doing now. Not sure when you started Happy Living, but it's some stress, but it's a whole lot less than what you were doing before, because now you're helping people a different way.
Better now. It's a transformation from helping companies to be better to helping people be better. Mm-hmm. And the concept of Happy Living was the same thing. Can we gather the collective intelligence of a marketplace? What are people doing? and distill it down into some best practices. And in the case of Happy Living, we do that with content. So we write blog posts, we have podcasts, we write books, and those, if you think of those as they're not software applications, but they're distilled down bits of information about something that we're doing or we're experimenting with or we've learned about that improves our health and happiness. And so then we can share that with the world. And if you can glean a little bit from a blog post that makes you just a little bit happier and healthier, then that's a big success for us.
Well, I can imagine it really is, because it's just so needed in this day and time. It's a difficult time to live in, and I'm constantly worried about my grandchildren being raised in the environment that we're in, because I just don't remember it being this difficult when I was a teenager. We just didn't have to worry about a lot of things like we do now. And then in retrospect, when I look back, there was still racism. There was still there wasn't a problem with drugs because we didn't have them when I was a teenager. But, with alcoholism and domestic violence, all the things were really the same. But I think it's more emphasized now because we have 24-hour view of everything,
24/7.
Yeah.
You said something interesting we didn't have to worry about. And I think that's true, but I would add a few words to that. We didn't have the choice to worry about. I think a lot of the stress that we take on in this modern day is because we're choosing to worry about things that we have either no control over or we're choosing not to do anything about. And if you don't have control over something and you're not going to do anything about it, it doesn't do you any good to worry about it.
And that's still true today, even after everything that we've been through, even at my age. You still find yourself worrying about something that you can't control. And I'm like, no, stop. You can't, there's nothing you can do about it. So I imagine a lot of your speaking engagements and things are addressing that. One of them is disconnect, immerse, and transform. Tell us a little bit about that, Matt.
You did your homework, Nancy.
I did.
So disconnect, immerse, and transform is a talk that I do for conferences aimed at this idea that any big conference, whether it's a health and wellness conference or a financial conference, in your old days, I'm sure you attended them. We had international trade conferences where the professionals or the people of that organization gather together to explore basically how to improve something, right? If it's not about it's just a big party, and there's nothing wrong with parties, but most of them are billed with, you come here, you're going to become a better trade professional because you're going to be learning the up-to-date latest things, being exposed to software, or in health and wellness, you're going to hear speakers that are leaders in their field telling you about how to eat right, how to exercise right, how the best science of the day, gut health, gut biome, connection to the brain, all this stuff. And the idea is you gather together, you learn, you get inspired, and it's easy to do at conferences. I know when I was designing, we were making software, and if you came to my booth and I was telling you about all the latest features and how it could help you do your job better, I would have a lot of people shaking their head just like you are now. Oh yes, Matt, we're going to buy this software, we're excited. And then what happens is their enthusiasm didn't survive the trip home.
Right.
And I explored why that was. Well, I didn't explore, I just observed that in international trade. When I started Happy Living, the first conference I went to was a health and wellness conference down in Austin, Texas, run by some friends of mine now, Keith and Michelle Norris. It's called Paleo FX. And it's the largest paleo lifestyle conference in the world. It's great. So I went down there, and my daughter and I were working together at the time, and I didn't know anything about being a blogger or doing Happy Living. It was all brand new. So I was kind of walking around like I was a news reporter or something, is the way I kind of. And I thought, I just felt like I found my people. I was so excited about everything I was seeing and feeling and the enthusiasm. And so I went home and I wrote a blog post about turning conference inspiration into action. And that led to me writing a book called Turning Inspiration into Action. And that led to the talk about and I'm forgetting the three words.
Disconnect, immerse, and transform. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is that when you're going to a conference, the first thing to do is to disconnect. So don't bring all of your old baggage, all the worries. You know, if I'm going to go down to a paleo conference in Texas for 4 days and I've got trouble at home, I'm not tending to the trouble at home. I don't have trouble. I shouldn't bring that with me. So I should completely disconnect to the extent you can, obviously without putting anybody in harm's way, but mentally, with my thoughts, disconnect, because I'm leaving my day-to-day and I'm going to this conference. And while I'm there and I'm disconnected, then I should just get completely immersed in what's going on and pay attention to those bits and pieces and people and products that inspire me. And disconnect, immerse, and then transform. And so that list of inspiration, what I should do is I should not judge it while I'm at the conference, but I should take note. I saw this person and I was inspired by this. I saw somebody singing and I was really inspired. It brought me back to my days maybe as a singer, and I haven't sang in a long time. That's not my story. I can't sing, but I was just making an analogy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw the way somebody was dressed and I really thought that was important, or I was inspired. I didn't think it was important. So just taking in what inspires you, getting immersed into it. If you think you might want to ask some fancy person up on stage a question, ask them. You know, be bold. Just if you see somebody in the hall that inspires you, you know, grab them and introduce yourself to them. Be bold and just get immersed in the conference. And then on the way home, apply what I write in my book about the transformational process, which is pay attention to what inspires you, ask why is it important to you, and then determine how you'll bring it into your life. And so on the way home, that's when you do that work. And you say, hey, I've got these 10 things that inspired me. Why is it important to me? And when I start asking why, I might find out that one thing was important for a lot of different reasons, and another thing wasn't important at all, and it wasn't really inspiration I felt. It was just maybe admiration, which is fine. Then maybe what I'll do is say, hey, Nancy, I really admire the way you run your radio show. But I determined that I really inspired about it. I admire it. I want to be a book writer, you know what I mean? So that first question, asking why is it important to me, invokes one of three powers that make you powerful enough to overcome the gravity, the forces that hold your life in place, the reasons that inspiration doesn't survive the trip home. These three powers make you stronger than that force that causes that. We can talk about that later if you like. And the first power is the power of priority. I'm choosing A and I'm letting B go. Mm-hmm. That process also invokes the second power, the power of the heart. And I call that the mama bear power. I'll walk through fire to do that because it's really important to me. And when you anchor it to your various reasons, it gives it more strength. So you've got power of priority and the power of the heart. And then the third question is, how will I bring it into my life? And when you start thinking about the third question, this is where I think a lot of people get derailed, because we're all busy. And so if I'm inspired and all of a sudden I want to write a book, I've got to look at everything I'm doing today and make some space for my transformation, the third thing. And so I should ask, of all the stuff that I'm doing today, my regular week-to-week and month-to-month stuff, and ask, why is it important? And if it's not, get rid of it. If it's important but I can outsource it, because maybe my circumstances in life has changed and I don't have to mow my lawn now, I can pay to have it mowed, do that. So get rid of it or outsource it, or determine it's really important to you and make space for your transformation. And when you then start doing the work of writing the book or singing the song or whatever you're inspired to accomplish and transform into, when you actually begin doing that work, you invoke the power of the universe. And that's serendipity and chance meetings and things that just propel you along on this journey of upward transformation that you could never have even imagined. And
Exactly.
that you got engaged in it.
Right. Oh, my word. That was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Well, we're kind of running out of time, but I do want to talk just a few minutes about your books. You've written 3 books. One of them is Turning Inspiration into Action, which is the one you were just talking about, which I think sounds very, very, very interesting. And I think a lot of people could get a lot out of that. And then the other one is the Belief Roadmap, which we don't have a whole lot of time to go in that. And you have a third one called Inspiring Women, which of course I love. So talk a little tiny bit about Inspiring Women for a few minutes.
Inspiring Women was an accident. I started with Happy Living. I started a podcast called Something Significant, which is about pursuing your purpose in life. And for whatever reason, for the first 12 episodes or so, and I was doing about one a month, almost all of my guests were men. And then in the summer, I think the summer of 2015, it might be 2016, I can't remember now. But anyways, in that summer, all of a sudden I had this run of podcast guests that were these amazing, powerful women, from entrepreneurs to filmmakers to an author that's writing about how grace is being exterminated in our world, to a woman that's running educational systems in schools in Zimbabwe, who's an awesome lady. And so I thought, this is weird. And then out of the blue, I got a Facebook message from a woman that goes by a single name, Himalaya. Her name is Himalaya Bell. And she wrote to me, and I didn't know who she was, and I don't know how she knew who I was. And she says, "Hey, Matt, would you be a guest, one of the guests on our online summit called Unstoppable Women?" And I thought, I'd be happy to be a guest. I'll talk to anybody if you'll have me talk. But that was really curious. And so I went on her show and I talked about turning inspiration into action, some of the things I'm doing that are certainly, they're not male or female, they are universal human traits and qualities. And so that was just too much of a sign for me. Mm-hmm. And so I just paid attention to that sign. There was inspiration was coming at me, and I was getting warning signs to do something. So I said, all right, I'm gonna turn this into a book. And I had already written several posts. The lady who wrote a post about grace being exterminated, she had a chapter on female stripping. And one of the things that she wrote about was the strippers were completely gave what the audience wanted. They didn't do anything for themselves. It was all for the other. And to her, she recognized that is a form of grace. And she wrote about all different kinds of chapters.
Wow.
But I wrote a blog post about I want to live with the grace of a stripper. And I wrote another blog post from the filmmaker, and she had written about how is man's man's right brain, that's the right, it's man's brain, the analytical brain, creating a woman's world. And just this beautiful, mini film that she did that I watched and was inspired by. And she also wrote one about 50-50, the time in the future when women will actually really honestly have a 50-50 chance everywhere in the world. And so I'd already written several blog posts. So the book is kind of my introduction. Himalaya writes the foreword. We have all these interviews of these amazing women, and then my closing down with, I think, some of the posts that I wrote about. So,
wow, that's awesome. Oh, my word. That sounds great. Well, tell us, we only have like a couple of minutes, but tell me how we can reach out to you for people that are going to want to get a hold of you because of this interview.
So our website's www.happyliving.com. This is my second or third entrepreneurial venture. So now my email address is matt@happyliving.com.
Okay. Good. Thank you. And of course, your books are all available, right, at the big bookstores and Kindle and all.
It's all online. So they're available at happyliving.com, and they're also mainly available at Amazon.
Okay, good, good.
Yep. Buy them, and if you buy them and love them, please leave me a review. If you buy them and you're not so happy with them, then send me a nice email and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm just so excited to have you today. You've been so inspirational to us, and such a huge. You're such a happy person. Wow, and I love happy living. So I'm so excited. I thank you so much, Matt Gersper, and I hope that everyone will really enjoy this. Okay, and thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.